Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we're joined by the fabulous Maria Avgitidis, a fourth-generation matchmaker, dating extraordinaire, and author of the new book, Ask a Matchmaker, to have a conversation with us about, well, dating, y'all. Inside the episode, we'll learn what Maria observes when two people first meet and if there's ways to tell compatibility. What early signs may indicate a connection has potential? Do we know if someone is the one right away? Maria shares all. We also get into global affairs and urban planning. Yeah, actually we do, because that's what we both studied in college respectively. And what do these disciplines have to teach us, have taught us indeed, about dating, connection, and community? Then Maria shares the number one dating deal breaker in modern dating, how digital and social media has impacted dating, and we'll end with some flirting tips. Of course, what Maria shares here, you don't want to miss. So if you're ready for some bold insights and a few matchmaking secrets, then this episode, well, it's for you. Let's do this, Flirties, and meet Maria.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, Flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, Flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, today we welcome Maria Avgitidis to the show as we ask a real-life matchmaker what the heck is happening out there in dating. She is the CEO of Agape Match, host of the Ask a Matchmaker podcast, and author of the new book, Ask a Matchmaker. She's been featured in the New York Times, CBS Sunday Mornings, Time Magazine, and the Washington Post, to name just a few. Maria, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm tickled to have you on.
Is it okay if I call you Ben, or do you prefer Benjamin?
Ben is, you know what? Benjamin is professional. It's clinical. I feel like we're casual today. We can do Ben.
All right, then let's do it, Ben.
We could even do a Benji if that comes out.
Hey, it's going to be a day.
It's going to be a day. I'm tickled to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you again for having me.
The new book, Ask a Matchmaker, is out. Flirties, grab your copy and you're going to get the do's and don'ts, the rules of dating and relationships, of course, and so much more, as you really offer also a social commentary on modern dating and relationships, what works, what doesn't, why is dating the way it is, what do we hear on social media, how does that influence our thoughts, opinions, and perspectives. We're going to get into a lot today, but up first, Maria, I have to ask you a little bit about matchmaking. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about that a little bit. So how did you get into this?
Do you want the short story or the long story?
You know what? I feel like I want a few details.
Okay.
Today, yeah.
Well, the short story is that I'm a generational matchmaker, although what my grandmother did and what I do are two very different things. But in the long story, which I do write about in my book, is like, how does this even happen to someone professionally? There was just a lot of innate social muscle and instinctive extroversion that came into play from as young as 5 years old at recess. And it culminated in college and then post-college in grad school and then looking for a job. Like, I was always the person hosting the parties. I was always the person bringing people together. You know, in some other different industry, they might call me a super connector, if you will. But it was when I was in grad school where I had taken all of that social muscle of like bringing my friends together for like wine and cheese parties in college, where I was like, I thought I was going to go into the Foreign Service. Okay. I went and pursued a graduate degree in global affairs. Like this is where I was pointing towards. And I thought, well, I need a job after I graduate this. I have a lot of student loan debt. What should I do? And I had just moved into New York City. And I very quickly, I said, I'm going to create, you know, NYCIR Thursdays. So New York City International Relations Thursdays. Okay. And essentially I would invite my classmates, my professors, anyone I may have met in those first 6 weeks of being in New York to Thursdays, 7 p.m. at this cocktail bar in Midtown. And I had negotiated with the bar to give us like 2-for-1 deal. Okay. So everyone got a drink ticket when they got in. And I see this in hindsight now, 16, 17 years later, but the people that were coming out on Thursday night were single people.
Okay.
And it really did spread because, my classmates knew someone who worked in foreign affairs or international relations or global affairs, whatever it is. New York City is such a hub of consulates and the UN. So every Thursday you were getting all of these people from this very specific industry.
Yep.
Is it an industry? But, like a sort of mindset, if you will.
Okay.
And we were all connecting on Thursday. So I was getting my professional goals done, but the people that were attending were also single. They weren't running home to their spouses or taking care of their kids on a Thursday night.
Right.
So it was very quick. And by quick, I mean like 3 weeks in where a couple met and then just took the super highway to getting married the following year. And then it was at that wedding where because I was still doing these events. And a lot of my friends would meet someone at these events or events that became tangent to this. Like for instance, we had planned an outing to go see the Mets play. So, these sort of things that would happen in creating a social circle and community.
Yeah.
But at that wedding, they were like, if you need to meet someone, go to Maria. She knows everybody.
Yes.
And I don't know everybody, but I had no problem finding people. And that was it. I still finished my graduate degree because I didn't know what this was yet.
Right.
I was aware of what my grandparents did, but it was so far away from what I thought my life would be.
Right.
And here we are.
Here we are.
And since then, I've set up over 5,000 first dates. I've answered over 8,000 dating questions. And now I have a book called Ask a Matchmaker.
That's amazing. Maybe try to forge a different path outside of matchmaking. And matchmaking said, nope, this is what you're doing.
No, yeah. And it was interesting because I remember going to my parents and I was like, I think I should quit grad school. Like, and my parents have such my parents are immigrants to this country. I came here as a child as well. And I also belong to that generation where it's like, you're going to college and not only going to college, you're getting a master's degree.
100%.
So my parents, while they were very excited for this like entrepreneurial endeavor, they were also, like, you have to finish your degree.
Yeah.
Of which they didn't pay for. I'm the one that got saddled with the student loan debt, but
yeah.
But it's funny because I get this question a lot from people that I'm close to, like, do you regret getting a graduate degree in global affairs? And I actually don't. I think it's actually put me in this perfect position where I can see things from like a micro community to like a macro perspective, which is, that sort of critical thinking that kind of degree would give you. But also it puts me in this much more freer positions than like some of my colleagues in the industry have, which is there are a lot of psychologists and therapists that work in the dating tangent, right? But some of them cannot actually give you prescriptive advice. Like they can't just be like, okay, do this and do that. They need you to come to that conclusion. And I don't have that restriction, or I can actually give you the no nonsense dating advice you need, which is like, and I think that has been very powerful, not only for the people receiving that message, but even the therapists that I've worked with. I work with a ton of therapists who will send me their, they have their patient and the therapist will be like, okay, but follow Maria too. Or, now they're like, okay, go buy her book. Like I say certain things that they can't actually say from, certain limitations that exist. So I feel like that's a good synergy between those two groups that are incredibly helpful for people that are, looking for better dating experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to definitely parts of your story as well, where I had a whole career before doing flirting and dating. I have my master's degree in urban regional planning, and I can see now the theme of connection has been present in everything I've ever done. I'm just exploring it in some new and exciting ways.
I mean, it's so interesting that you say that because I almost pursued a master's in urban planning at Penn. Wow. I don't think I've ever said that out loud to anyone. I mean, my family knows, but I was like thinking about doing that because I think at the end of the day, what that field and global affairs and it's another type of anthropology, essentially, right? Exactly. Like, how do we connect in in a social science or in a logistics point of view, it's operations. Like there's so many facets to connection.
Yep.
The one thing that I feel like my degree gave me a lot of clarity in, and it's so funny because it's really present in today, is that when you study global affairs or international relations, wow, I never thought I'd be talking about this on a podcast, but it is briefly mentioned in my book. So I'll give it that. I remember thinking about how the world reorganized post World War II. And you see that in a lot of the world, especially in collectivist societies, much of Europe, which is, they didn't say stuff like, okay, now you're going to buy a car. Now we're going to build a highway. Now you're going to go into a suburb. Now you're going to have your windows up. Now you're going to be in these silos. And they kind of like reinvested in the town square, which existed. The town square existed before. We also had town squares before World War II.
Yeah.
And instead now we have like these super highways that go over them.
Yeah.
And now, you look 70 years later, it's American men that are experiencing extreme loneliness. And I don't necessarily think women are to blame at all, but I also don't think a lot of men are to blame either. I do think that it has been systemic as our culture to keep us in this very individualist, nuclear family dynamic. I mean, I think about a lot. Like if I met a single man, I used to live in Greece as like a young adult. And if I met a 27-year-old man who lived at home with his mother, no part of me ever thought this man didn't launch or this man is a failure. I just thought, yeah, of course he lives with his mom because he's a single man under 35. He's, saving money. He's helping out his mom. He sees his grandmother every day. Like it was such a very empathetic way of viewing this person.
Yeah.
But in the United States, where we have this nuclear family promotion post World War II, so it's something that we're 3 generations in. For most of us, this is all we know. Yeah. If you meet a 27-year-old man who still lives at home with his mom, you can kind of fill in the blank of like what people think of that person.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's like there's certainly a fertility crisis in Europe. Yeah. But almost every sociologist or even financial analyst will tell you it's because of the financial crisis, not because they've been built, the society's been built where you are alone.
Right. Okay.
So these are just very different perspectives.
Yeah. It's all really interesting. The themes of connection and loneliness I think about all the time, and I reflect back on my time as a city planner. Yeah, I don't think we have a true loneliness epidemic in the sense that if you're on social media, there's a lot of narrative about the male loneliness epidemic. I take out the word male. I think we have beyond loneliness a disconnection epidemic that is no longer an epidemic. It's endemic to our societies, especially if you live in a more westernized society that has industrialized and developed in the ways that the United States has. How could we not be disconnected from ourselves, from our purpose, from our why, from one another?
I also think that, I think the United States depended a lot on religious community to create those social epicenters.
I think so too.
So you see, for instance, the JCC, right? That's those are incredibly well-equipped community centers. The YMCA, like the Y events, but you also I'm Greek Orthodox Christian, so my church has a community center attached to it.
Yeah,
those churches in Europe don't have community centers attached to them. They have the town square. They have actual community centers. But the problem with that, with the government relying on religion to make these community centers. And again, we're 3 generations in, like this is not something that was just created post-pandemic.
Right.
Is that people though have embraced agnosticism or atheism. And essentially it's like, you're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? It's like, okay, I don't want religion,
right?
But I no longer have access now to like the potluck.
Yeah. This is something I think about where a lot of our social networks have broken down over time. A lot of the connections we made in our communities, it's like before you had social media, before you had the internet, chat GPT, all of this, how did you make friends? How did you learn about who you may date, who you may partner with, the job, the person that was going to babysit your kids, the person that had a talent or skill to fix something, to repair something, to offer something that you didn't have? It was all through word of mouth. That's how we also learned about one another, other cultures, ourselves, right? And so a lot of that, I know it's been pushed to the fringes. And like a lot of what I did in my city planning career was I studied land use and transportation. And what really got me into that was the building of the interstate system, right? And to do that, you had to completely dismantle entire communities. And what communities were absolutely destroyed? Minority communities, Black and brown communities were.
And it's funny because it's the minority communities, it's the immigrant communities that usually have such a strong social epicenter.
Yeah.
So for those to be decimated, this is like, okay, this might be my favorite podcast now because I never get to talk about these things. So I love, you know what it is, because you're also educated in this form of connection.
Yeah.
You know, one of the I do talk about this in my book. Another part of the book, and this, I believe this is in chapter 3, is like living in the same reality. So yes, we might all be disconnected, figuratively speaking, because of how urban design and planning post World War II, and now, you know, us, the grandkids of that design, are not only us, but our children are suffering those consequences of that design 70 years ago. But what is different now versus what was different even 20 years ago is that how we get our news is so fragmented that we cannot agree on a reality. Recently, I listened to an episode where Pete Buttigieg was speaking. He's our former department, Treasury Secretary, right? I'm not sure. Excuse me. He's our former transportation secretary.
The transportation guy.
Yeah, exactly. And he said something that it just kind of hit the nail on the head, which was that, you know, 50 years ago or 30 years ago, even, people watched the nightly news.
Yes.
They saw Walter Cronkite, a man that they trusted, to give them the facts. And so even if you maybe disagreed with his facts, we've all watched the same performance or, you know, newscast. And we can come up with our own conclusions. And so what that means is that we can all agree on the same problem. We don't have to agree on the solution, but that's where you come to the table, you compromise, you negotiate, you have a conversation. What's happened now, especially with the introduction of algorithmic news in the last, I want to say 8 years, is that one, we're being fed not only information that is created to make us want to click it. It's like at the outrage machine.
Definitely.
We're also watching very different realities play out. And I feel like I see this even in our politicians, right?
For sure.
I mean, that's the first and foremost. I recently saw an interview that President Trump did, and this is not a political statement, so I don't want any listener to misunderstand what I'm about to say, but I watched him give an interview, and he believes with his full chest that prices are down. And it made me wonder, like, I wonder what channels he's watching. I wonder what data he's getting. Because listen, the man was born into wealth and he did whatever he did with it. I don't think he knows. It's really hard to empathize or understand with the everyman person who's living paycheck to paycheck might be currently thinking when they go into a supermarket. If you've never been to the supermarket yourself.
I can tell you, I work at one. Them prices, they ain't coming down, Matchmaker Maria. They're not really going up right now.
But you know, they're also, I'm not defending him. What I'm saying is that even our own politicians are not living in the same reality that you and I might be. And I think this is where, you know, media literacy is super important. And I think conversating with people in your community is super important because, you're not, look, so for some people, if you asked me this 10 years ago, could you date someone on the other side? That was post, Barack Obama going against Mitt Romney. I would have been like, of course, you could certainly date someone who doesn't vote like you.
Right.
But I haven't felt like that in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Because we are living in different realities. We're on different, it's not even the planets. It's just different universes.
Yeah, politics doesn't come up a lot on Flirtations, but I'm glad it is because I've always maintained the stance that we live and date within systems, not just political systems, but economic systems, cultural systems, religious systems. And so to think that the systems in which we live, in which we operate, in which we date don't impact how we connect, form relationships, I think we're naive to think that they don't, or we're coming from a place of extreme privilege.
And I do make that case in my book, right? Which is that I'm not trying to be political,
right?
But this is the number one deal breaker
right now
on both sides. So we have to talk about it, right?
We do.
But how much of that is politics and how much of that is us living in our own algorithmic echo chambers,
our filtered realities. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the case that I made because I do even mention a couple, this is a client that I had. I mentioned them where, she had a very different value set. So despite her and her boyfriend voting the same, right? They're both Democrats. They had such different perceptions of value as it pertains to money and how they spend it and how they give back to their community. And that is ultimately what ended it for them.
Yeah.
So, in the chapter, Are We Too Different to Make It Work? I don't think most people are too different to make it work. I think a lot of people are inequipped to give themselves the grace to change their opinion when new information is presented to them.
Yeah.
And that hurts people, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was going to ask this question, what you observe as a matchmaker. I'm very curious, maybe we're talking about it, but about human behavior. And so I was wondering, in some of those spaces where you are facilitating connection, can you make observations? Are you able to see something, to see ooh, this person, right? I see at least potential. Can you observe compatibility in ways that maybe daters in it don't always see?
Yes. And I wish this question could be its own podcast because it's a lot. So I'm going to I'll throw a few out.
Okay.
I think that as a matchmaker for a lot of clients, I have to balance their wish list with a reality check. And sometimes that wish list is incredibly self-aware and has a lot of emotional resilience built in. But sometimes there are clients they're surrounded by yes people, right? They've been successful in their careers. They're surrounded by yes people. So when they come to me, they're expecting more yeses. And then I do have to give a bit of the reality check, I love that you have made money for yourself. I love that you are successful.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of person you want to date. Does not care about this, right? They care that you're passionate. They care that you are leading in your industry, sure. But there's also all these other things that they care about. I will say, though, that anytime I've set up, and now I'm going to talk heteronormatively, and I mean, I guess this actually even goes with our gay clients as well. Anytime I've set up a man, I always collect, first of all, anytime I've set up any date, I collect date feedback. So if it's the first or the second date, if I set it up, I'm collecting date feedback from both parties. So I'm able to not only calibrate their search, but get a lot of information.
Right.
And so I have noticed that when a man comes back to me in this feedback and there's a lot more emotional energy in it, to tell me about how the date went.
Okay.
To me, that's oh, I bet he marries her.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting when that happens because then it's they're giving way more grace to this person. They're not looking for reasons for it not to work out.
Yeah.
They're talking about how they felt during the date.
Okay.
And it's always interesting to see that switch up because I can show you a client's, date history through me, right? I'm thinking about a client right now. And he went on 12 dates through us.
Okay.
His last match was actually the woman that he would end up marrying.
Okay.
And when you look at the other feedback, it was quite, I want to say analytical, but there was always something like, well, she did this.
Yeah.
Or there was this. And, the 12th woman, she's no different than every other woman.
Okay.
I think what was different was like their souls connected, I guess, I suppose, there was, that was it. That was the person for him, but he came back and the email, the feedback was just so much more like charged with emotion.
Right. Oh, this is so interesting. I have a couple follow-up questions. I definitely want to stay here for a moment because as we're talking about kind of social media and how we're getting filtered information, that certainly applies to dating and relationship advice as well. And what I oftentimes see presented is advice or takes without any nuance, right? They're created for clicks, for virality, focused on a very specific topic or question. Oh my God, I feel like I'm fighting it. I stitched another one right before hitting record today. I am fighting it left and right because I feel like life happens in the gray. Life happens in the nuance. Life is complex. And if you're trying to deduce something like dating, forming relationships to a black and white premise, to yes or no, to good or bad, I feel like it takes away our own agency to think critically, right? To really decide for ourselves based on our own alignment system, our own values, what's important, what do we want, right? You cannot take something complex like dating and distill it into a 60-second video as this is good, this is bad. So with that example, one thing I hear a take on social media is that guys know right away whether you're the one, right? They know instantly.
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I don't think that's true at all. Sometimes I will know that that's the one and I'll be like fighting tooth and nail for them to go back out.
Yeah.
I will say that I think a man's ego is really fragile.
You're telling me.
It's much more fragile than a woman's.
Oh my God, 1,000%, and they'll never admit it.
Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, agree fully.
Right. So there's small things that someone could do on a date with a man to not build up an ego, but like make him feel like acknowledged at the very least, so that we're at a neutral level.
A lot of advice about that.
And it's those small things that actually make them want a second date and then a third date. And then a fourth date. So I don't think anyone knows, when you know, like, I don't think I've never experienced that. Right.
Okay.
As a professional setting up, people forget me. I do know that there will be a date, especially right in the beginning, like sometime in the first 2-3 weeks where you're like, oh, this is a little different. Let me see where this goes.
Okay.
I remember feeling that with my husband on our second date where I was like, wow, he's like actively listening. I feel really safe with him and he's not trying to have sex with me.
Yeah.
Like this is different. Like there have been other times where I've been on second or third dates with a guy where there is this sort of, I don't want to say sexual tension, but this like innuendo that might come up.
Definitely.
And it's like, okay, but we're not talking about that right now. I'm trying to tell you about my favorite Friends episodes. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of my clients, it's like, oh, this was different. Let me keep dating them.
Okay.
I think a lot of people that are married will then turn to their friends and say, when you know, because they forget that they didn't know.
Okay.
So it's easy for that. It's like, it's simple advice, but it's not advice. And that's actually a really big problem because when you tell people that, I was actually interviewed on a British morning news thing like 2 or 3 years ago. And the host and I got into a fight on air.
Yeah.
Because he goes, well, I knew when I met my wife. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You liked your wife, that person that you met.
Yeah.
You want to see her again.
Yeah.
And then you saw her again and you were like, I like this. I want to do it again. You did it again.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how long have you been married? And he's like 16 years. And now 16 years later, you forgot the first 3 months, the butterflies, the anxiety, the excitement, all that. You've forgotten. And now you're trying to argue with me to tell me.
Right.
When you know. When I'm telling you, most people don't know. And the problem with that messaging is that it tells single people, well, if you didn't know on the first or second date, it's not a match.
Absolutely.
And that's that's actually probably the biggest obstacle I have as a professional matchmaker. Like if you ask me what the problem is like, I will share with a client a bio of a person I want to set them up with. I go, hey, here's her photos. No.
Right off
Over
the bat,
what?
like
I just know. What are you talking about? You don't even know that. Like you've never even smelled them. Like how can you possibly know? If I could get rid of that part of the dating process, because there was a time I remember before Tinder came out, that's how long I've been in business. I didn't share photos. I didn't share profiles. Like I didn't do any of that. I was just like, you're going on a date with Jake. Bye. You know, fully blind, 1988. And, so many things shifted when dating was on your app and like it was an app and then like it was just so different. And now I can't even get people to like, people will get, I have clients who will get angry at me for not sharing the best profiles of someone. And I'm like, this doesn't matter. What matters is you going on a physical first date right now. Like I didn't just select some random person for you. I selected someone who fits your, who's compatible to you in an intellectual way, like your same sense of humor and communication patterns. I've selected someone who shares in the same lifestyle as you. I've someone who's emotionally healthy and like ready for a serious relationship, wants to get married, wants to have kids. And you're just like deducing her to like what words she used to describe her profession. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, what do you think some of that is about? I mean, some of the things I feel like I see from daters are sometimes we sort of appease the dating process. Like maybe we're not fully ready for a relationship or we want something more casual, right? We don't want to go, date with that kind of intention. And so we create the profile, we make some matches, we have a conversation or two, maybe go on a date, but then we dip or we ghost because we know we're not ready. But if we're flirting with the dating process, then I can say at least I'm trying, right? Maybe you don't see that a ton with your clients because they're working with a matchmaker, a professional.
I will say, luckily in my line of work, I mostly meet people that want to get married and maybe even grow a family in the next 2 years. So I feel very sheltered in this way. However, I do talk to single women every day and they do tell me that the problems that they're experiencing in online dating or dating out and about or whatever. I think it's a lack of middleman. So, I met my husband through friends. All of our parents, any listener of this podcast, your parents met through friends.
Absolutely.
And if they didn't meet through friends, they met through some social community event.
That's it.
Which means that someone knew someone else that knows the person that your mother dated.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is what is true and what I can like set on. And then, since 2008, more and more people are meeting online. And since 2015, that's only
increased.
It's exponentially. Most people are meeting online. The difference is that a lot of rules have to change, right? So like if I met someone, like for instance, I met my husband through a friend. We had a mutual friend. She didn't set us up. It was very strategic, a la Taylor Swift. I came with a master plan and was like,
mastermind.
It's true. Because I told the people that set us up, they didn't set us up, but I told them, next time you're hanging out with your friends, please invite me.
Okay.
I didn't ask them to set me up, but I was like, I like these people. I bet they have really great friends. And a week later they called me and they're like, we're going to be in Boston. I'm like, you got it. Got an Amtrak ticket, went from New York to Boston. And I met all of their friends. One of them would end up being my husband. But in that interaction, right, we had like 3 people between us. that acted as like accountability partners.
Yeah.
So even after my first date, I was staying at this friend's house and they're asking me on the T ride home, do you like him? What do you like about him? Like, and then they're calling him, same thing, and that's a good thing because there's a less chance of this person ghosting you because they also don't want the social consequence of being a douchebag to a person that their friends are friends with.
Very true.
There are no social consequences when you meet someone online and then you ghost them, harass them, talk shit. Like, this is a stranger in a sea of strangers. And I think that is what hurts. I think this is also something that is like a shame that, back when Hinge was created, it's called Hinge because you're supposed to have a connection. But that feature is gone now. Okay. It would be cool if they brought it back.
Wow. Yeah.
Because now you have that person in between that's like,
right. This is so cool how we opened really with talking about how you got started in matchmaking, or matchmaking found its way to you, and then how we've seen this just overall shifting and changing of our societies, of our communities, and how we form relationships, how we date and connect. And so much of it has transferred onto the internet, whether it's dating apps, whether it's social media.
But it's also like the kind of dates you go on too, right? So like, my grandmother was a matchmaker and so was her mother and her grandmother. And the way they matched is, I would assume, the way other matchmakers matched 2,000 years before them or 5,000 years before them, right? And it is the same, which is like, I'm going to take a good girl from this family with a good boy from this family. And, and marriage then was also a tool, right? It was the only way a woman could get an economy. It was also a way for families to build an economy between themselves, right? So it was not about love. It was about strategic partnerships. You could see this with like any royal marriage in the medieval, in those times, right? So these are strategic alliances from small little villages to like big capitals. And what's interesting is that when my grandmother did it, she's setting up a Greek person who's Greek Orthodox with another Greek person who's Greek Orthodox. They're from the same village or like maybe adjacent villages. They probably have the same level of education, like some 6th grade education or something. And their values, their reality, their socioeconomic status is nearly identical. Right. So the conversations you need to have when you date now are not the same as then. That's why people also got married quicker then, right? Because you don't have to get to know someone, their family. You know that there's all these fail safes, there's all these things that are centered around that sort of marriage structure. Right. So now you take it to 2025. If I meet someone online, I have to talk to them about a lot of things just to get to the level of introduction that my grandmother did.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your family. Tell me more about your friends, which I know someone hearing this right now is like, well, why wouldn't, but there was a time when you knew these answers. Right. Without having them, like you can make certain assumptions. And that existed even when I met my husband, because I met him through a friend. I could deduce certain things where I wouldn't have to necessarily ask him about. Yeah.
This is also interesting because I definitely wanted to ask you today about, because the reasons why we're dating and looking to form relationships are different, not across the board, but different, where we more in the past, maybe we were dating for survival, or maybe that was the expectation, right? To have a family, to be a part of the church or something like that. You married and formed partnerships because you had to. Right. Because you had to. That's no longer the case for a lot of us. So if that's not why or what our motivation is to date and form relationships, then what is it? Is it for love? Is it for companionship? Yeah, like we're in this really interesting...
I think it's... Look, don't get me wrong. I think it's better now.
Okay.
Marriage back then was a tool, as you said, it was an economic tool that had religion... seeped into it, right? As a way for control. But there was a lot of people who did not want to get married. There was a lot of people who may have been LGBT,
Yeah.
that were put in marriages of someone that they would have never chosen. There were people that were in love with someone else, and then they were married off to someone that they were not in love with.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of people became parents who did not want to be parents, or who should not have become parents, or have so many kids that, but it was also like economic necessity to have this many kids. Yeah. Also because you had situations where the mortality or the rate of infancy survival was so low. Right. So, I'm thinking about my grandmother now because, both sets of my grandparents lost infants. Mm-hmm. One of them lost two, before she even had turned 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And then from there, she had 7 more kids with someone that I don't know if she necessarily loved my grandfather. I think she respected him. Mm-hmm. I don't know that much about her in that way because we also, when we talk to those previous generations, it's very rare that they even give you the comfort of asking them those questions, which is why it's so rare, which is why when they do, it becomes a viral clip on TikTok or YouTube. That's how rare it is, right? Yeah, so this is, marriage is certainly traumatic. What's happened now though, marriage is seen as a way to, 1, celebrate your love, but 2, marriage is also agreeing to a companion. Mm-hmm. And companionship is such a beautiful thing that you don't have to get married to participate in it. Right. And I think if you think about what marriage is in 2025, at the end of the day, marriage, if you look at just the numbers, it's part of your taxes in the States, but it's also, it gains you access to things that you would not have otherwise had access to if you weren't married, right?
That's true.
Which is why people from the LGBTQ community fought for certain rights in this country to get access to those. Mm-hmm. But if you look at other societies where those rights are already granted to you without the tool of marriage, you see that marriage rates drop significantly. And one of those countries is Sweden.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? Women have certain rights there over their companions. If you live with someone, or like who gets to have medical say when someone passes away, like marriage here is very much a tool to gain it's an access thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I look, there's going to be less marriages. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't think it's a bad thing either. Especially, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Right, when to participate in companionship, marriage is not an exclusive thing that must happen. Yeah.
No, but you have to, if you don't want to get married, you certainly have to contact a lawyer to get certain rights allocated to you and your partner.
Yeah.
So that way, the things that married people do have access to, you can possibly have access to as well. And those are really important things. Important, like they're not like, you need a medical treatment and you're unable to speak. Like who's advocating on your behalf?
Yeah.
Like these are really serious things that marriage gains you access to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This has been such an interesting conversation.
You came in here thinking, I'm just going to interview this rosy-posy matchmaker, ask her some questions about dating, and she'll probably give me advice like, just be your authentic self.
I thought
and
maybe.
That is what I hope anyone who's listening, if you end up buying my book, and I certainly hope you do, it's called Ask a Matchmaker. Sorry, I'm going to talk about myself, Ben.
Yes.
G. But if you do, I want you to know that this is what the book is actually like. Like I am asking the serious questions. Like I did not want to give you a fairy tale Disney character. Like I'm not going to insult the reader.
Right.
In this way. Like we have real problems in this country when people are looking for a companion to go through life with.
Yes.
And I hope that the book gives those people a lot of courage and clarity. There's no magic formula, but there's certainly the knowledge that you need to set clear boundaries to have the best dating experience as possible.
I love it. I can't wait to read this book. I'm fascinated by this, and even more so by you. I've been following for a while. This was a real pinch me moment, but now I have like a whole new understanding. This has given me a lot to think about. I want to ask you just one more quick question before we conclude. I mean, I've got to ask you about flirting.
I have a move. Do you have a move?
Plural. Multiple. Yes. What do you think about flirting?
I love flirting.
Oh, God, me too.
I have so many moves, actually, now that I said that. But I have a mindset, and I actually have this in my book as well. And it's called, am I allowed to curse?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So everybody wants to fuck you. That is what I literally, I mean, I'm a married woman with 2 kids, but I still say this to myself every time I get in my car and leave my house. And let me tell you what that mindset does.
Let's hear it.
And I could be in a room full of women. I still say this to myself as I enter the room. Everybody here wants to fuck you. It fixes your posture. Tits up.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Shoulders back, chin up too.
And it's like magnetizing.
Yes.
Because if you think that everybody wants to fuck you, you're not performing for the male gaze anymore. It's like you're the main character. So now it's like the theater around you versus like you performing.
Yes.
That's my first one. The second one is I'm a tall girl. I'm 5'11".
Okay.
And I always wear heels too. So I'm usually towering over people. When that posture scenario, I also refuse to bend down when I'm talking to someone. I mean, I'll happily sit. If I see there's like a huge height discrepancy, I'll ask the person to like sit down with me. It'll make both of us feel comfortable. But to use that to my advantage, like people are really attracted to other people that have confidence.
Yes.
And there is a way to fake it. But another thing that I would tell you is that when you are tall and you look, the thing about tall privilege is that people give you a lot more power than you might deserve. So they immediately think you're independent. And I always wonder, like, was I always independent or was I forced into this at the age of 7 because I, was just a really tall person. I hit this height when I was 14, and then I stopped growing. It's like 5'11", you're done. But what that does is that it makes people think you're not vulnerable and that you're not sensitive. Like I've had this issue throughout my life where it's like people don't realize how sensitive I am. So one of my flirt tricks on a first date or a second date to show and, kind of stroke that male ego a little bit, but to also show like, I need your help, like on something really stupid is I would go on dates with, a bracelet I really wanted to wear that had a clasp.
Okay.
And I'd be like, hey, I really want to wear this bracelet on our date, but I can't do it myself. Can you help me? And just that small physical touch where they're helping you with something so stupid as a bracelet clasp. It's like, A, it shows that I am vulnerable and that I am sensitive. But B, it also shows the guy like, oh, she needs my help a little bit. It's so simple.
Yes.
And then my main move, if I'm in a room, back when I was single, I don't know if I would do this now, but when I was single, I would look at people for like 5 seconds as if I actually knew them. So I'm going to do it to you right now. Okay. Am I looking in the camera now? Does it look like I'm looking at you?
Absolutely, Maria.
So I'm at the bar, tits up. Everyone wants to fuck me, right? That's the mindset. And I was just talking to my friends. And as I'm talking to my friends, like my face is here, but my eyes are there. And I'd be like at you and I'd be looking at you like, like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then I would go back to my friend and then I would look back again. And it's kind of like, and then that was it. And then every time the guy just comes on over and he's like, do I know you? And I'm like, yeah, you do.
I do. Yes, I love that classic take on, it's a classic move, the flirt double take, but you are offering it in a different way where you're stationary, your conversation, your direction is you're interacting with a friend or someone.
It almost looks like I'm talking about him.
Right.
Because I'm facing my friend, but my eyes are looking at you.
It piques curiosity.
And it's like, who's this girl? Like, and I'm like, I don't know you, but.
Yes. Ooh, that's a good one.
But you can't do this to the hot guy in the room because everyone's looking at him. You also have to have, like I said, you have to have some self-awareness in dating.
Okay. Absolutely.
And go for the 5, 6, 7, 8s.
Well, those are some really good flirting tips. The Flirties, y'all have some homework now if you're single and out there dating.
I challenge them to do it to 5 men by the end of this month. Whatever,
Okay.
by in the next 4 weeks.
Yes.
Once you do it like 2 times, it becomes so easy that you just start doing it to everybody.
Yeah.
It's crazy what kind of social muscle you could build.
Before you leave the house, the apartment, whatever, everybody wants to fuck me.
Everybody wants to fuck me. I still do that.
We are doing the eye contact. Yes, because people are ultimately attracted to confidence and authenticity. That's it.
And by the way, I'm not saying I would let them.
Right.
Like even when I was single, I'm not saying I would let you all have sex with me. It's just the mindset. It's like,
totally.
I refuse. I don't get my validation from men. My validation comes from my own self-respect.
Yes.
But when you have that mindset, like I said before, like it just takes away the male gaze. Like I'm not competing with another woman. I'm already desirable.
My God.
And it changes everything in how you even dress.
Yes.
Like you dress I feel like I have my own personal sense of style because I've convinced myself that everybody wants to fuck me and I don't really care. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I don't care for fashion trends.
It's not
because
it
doesn't matter to me.
Right. And it's not about dressing in a way to be validated, to be seen as attractive or appeasing the people.
And I don't want to. And the thing is also, it's like self-selection. I don't want to attract a man who has only consumed the male gaze his whole life.
Yeah.
That's not the person for me.
Nope.
And again, I actually talk about this in my book. I talk about male gaze, female gaze. I break it all down. I talk about like looking for men who would describe themselves as feminists. I talk about wholesome masculinity. So like, I'm not giving you ideas that are foreign right now. Like all of this is granularly, is that a right word?
Yeah.
Written out for the reader.
You went deep. Okay. How can the Flirties find your book? If you could mention the name again and also your podcast.
Absolutely. So you can find my book at any bookstore.
Okay.
It's called Ask a Matchmaker. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm Matchmaker Maria. And if you go to my Instagram and you hit the link in bio, you can see all these links like how to join my matchmaking database, how to purchase my book, how to listen to my podcast, also named Ask a Matchmaker. But it's got all those links in there. But so I don't confuse anyone. I'm hoping Benji will just include a link to buy my book in the show notes. Just hit that.
1,000%. I already have it.
And then follow me on Instagram. I have a very different community. I mean, I think Ben is amazing in how I just think you're so, I don't know why I'm talking to the second person now. I think you're so good at how you communicate to your followers, but you and I have extremely different communication patterns, but I think they're also complementary.
I agree. I think so too.
There's like I don't like to follow too many dating accounts. And if I do, some of them, I have them muted because I can't handle, it's like a lot.
Right.
And especially because I'm not the audience. So I'm looking at it as like, not competition, but like collaboratively, like, okay, do I agree with this or not?
Yeah,
like I'm looking at it from more like a knowledge.
Yeah, it's research. Your comp accounts, I call them. Yeah, I follow a few of those as well to be like, okay, what are they talking about and how are they talking about it? What's that engagement like? What are in the comments? Yes.
Yeah, and it's the outrage engagement that annoys me to no end. Like I don't think I say anything really I don't belong in that world, so it's very different in my approach of mine's very like, okay, here's your just be really clear, just be honest, just have a conversation, go on a walk. You know?
And I appreciate that. We need it. We need you in dating. I'm so glad you're doing what you do.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation. Matchmaker Maria, thank you so much for being on Flirtations today.
Totally. And I said it before, this is my favorite podcast to be on because no one has ever like talked about urban planning before with me. And like, I'm just so passionate about that stuff. It's in my book. I write about it in my book. So I'm excited for your listeners to read that.
Yeah, we got to go there today. And I have my bedtime reading material for the foreseeable future.
I love that.
All right, Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations. Thank you so much to Matchmaker Maria Avgitidis, for coming on the program today. Her new book, Ask a Matchmaker, is out. Whatever you do, get yourself a copy, download, buy, stream, listen, Kindle, Audible, however you read books, however you listen to books. I think you should make this a part of your book selection in the very near future. It's fantastic. And may I say, not one of those typical dating books. Yeah, it's a little different in all the best of ways. And I think you really, learned a lot about what is in the book here on the episode today with Maria. So thank you, Maria, for being on the show today. And thank you to the Flirties for tuning in, for listening, for streaming, wherever you be in the world. None of this would be possible without you. I do all of this for you. Yeah, it's a fun creative outlet for me. I do love hitting record, setting up interviews, making videos, doing the podcast. Yeah, but I can only listen to it so many times. My cat Sugar can only listen to it so many times. It's for you. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and many others of Flirtations. Rate, review, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. And now share this one or another favorite episode with a friend, someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with. I'd love you for it and greatly appreciate it. Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. Signing off officially here at Flirt Headquarters. I've checked all the boxes for the outro. My name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and gay Libra Flirty. Happy flirting.